Good morning, Margie.
Unmute. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm okay. How about yourself? Surviving the snow?
Oh, I know it's been so hard on the kids because they're like snow day, and I'm like, well,
No, I get it. I totally get it.
yeah. I try to explain to them, even if we had snow days, like they'd have to make them up in June and so they'd be yelling at me. Everybody joins us. We're going to give everyone a few extra minutes because it's all virtual day, so we want to make sure that we have all our members. I see we have Mrs. Walker, Mr. Ranellis here, Mr. Paulson. We're starting to get, yeah, there's Ms. Orozco is with us. So we're just going to give it like another minute and then we'll get started. Hopefully everybody's got the agenda up. Okay, I think we have quite a nice attendance so far. We have 27, so let's get started. Good morning and welcome. You all know me, I'm Margie Rafferty-Crishone, I'm the PIC chair. I hope you're all enjoying the second day of virtual school. I know I am. I just want to say welcome to our February meeting. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge Chris Rotolo, who's our wonderful person who helps make all of this possible, just got engaged over Christmas. So we want to say a quick congratulations to Chris and his fiance. I wish them the best luck and I hope everything works out wonderfully as we head into the year 2 of the pandemic. And let's get started. Yes, congratulations, Chris. I think it's wonderful. A little bright spot in all of this.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's get started with update on implementation of phase 6. I know this is a hot button topic and we'll turn it over to Devin and the principals, which sounds like a rock band, by the way.
We should definitely start that rock band. I love it. So phase 6, I don't have anything really specific to report other than we are trying to get there. So I know that we sent out our survey to all the parents to see who would be coming back and when, to try to see how many people would be in attendance if and when we'll go with when we are able to collapse those cohorts. So at this point, we're in the information gathering phase. And yeah, I know Mrs. Walker has some more information on phase 6 as well. From the school side of it, the principals and the teachers are working together to try to prepare everything that they can so that they are ready for when we do have more students in our classrooms, whenever that is going to be able to happen. So we are currently inventorying all of our PPE, all of our masks and gowns and things like that to make sure that we're ready to do all those services that we need to do and get that out into all of the school buildings. The principals may be able to talk more about what that looks like in their building. I'm not sure. And then I know Mrs. Walker was going to try to go out and then come back in again so that she can give us more of an update.
I could, at the elementary level, really, we have a couple of meetings scheduled. Our main focus, obviously, is the response to the survey that went out. But for those of us that have special class programs, we're actually meeting today with just the district administration, and then tomorrow is a scheduled day where we are going to discuss some of our data meetings for our SGOs. If you know that the governor did push that off a little bit, or he said that we're not going to be using our student growth objectives for our evaluation. So we're repurposing that day to focus primarily on phase 6. And that's really where we're headed with this. Today, though, our meeting, which is after PIC today, is really focused on next week with our special class programs, getting them onboarded all day and just making sure that we're set to go with that and just working logistics out. And a lot of it, as you know, each of our buildings at the elementary level are pretty unique. We all have our own different design and layout. Even the ones that are similar, like Nut Swamp and Harmony, they're still much different when you walk the building. Each team or each building level principal is working with their staff and their PRTs to just make sure that when we move into phase 6, we're there, we're safe, and we're doing it appropriately. So we're kind of excited about it, and we're looking forward to having the kids back.
Hi, can everybody hear me now? Okay, good, thanks. Sorry, I was having a little audio problem. And I was going to show you something, but I don't want to play with my computer right now, so I'll just talk about it. We did have, and good morning, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm a little frazzled because I couldn't get on. Good morning, nice to see everyone. I was going to show you some of the documents, some of the information that we showed our PRT subcommittees last Friday, but I can talk about them, that's fine. All right, the first thing that we showed them, it just gives us a little bit of background and everybody a little bit of background about what we do and why we do it. So and I think we talked about this before, there's the regional risk matrix that we looked at. It comes out every Thursday. It's for the state. We are the Central East. There's 6 regions, I believe. And we're with Middlesex, Monmouth, and Ocean counties. And it comes out every Thursday, and it's based on the data the week before. So when we met with our health experts, our school physician, our local health department, we discussed when, and this was back in the middle of January 18th, somewhere around there. We discussed, how we can get to phase 6 and what would be the timing of that. And at that point, the risk, we're in orange, which is high or very high. No, it's high. It's high. Very high is red. We're in high. So in each matrix or in each, category, you follow different recommendations. They're a little more stringent as you get higher risk in the matrix. So we're high. So we're following some pretty strict, guidelines. But we talked about the numbers, where they're going, where the health experts thought they were going, and what would be a good anticipated date. And at that time, it was a month out. February 16th looked like a great date. So that's our anticipated date. The data has gone down. There was a little blip up last week. So on Thursday, we'll see, hopefully it will continue to go down and we will be ready to go to implementation of phase 6 on the 16th. But we will do that only if the health data supports that. That's our goal. That's what we're looking at. But if the health data isn't there, we won't go. But that being said, the recommendations of the next thing I was going to show you are the recommendations that we follow and the health department and our doctor follows when we're looking at whether to pivot a school or a class or a grade to virtual. And as I said, they change with the different risk levels that the state or your region rather is in. The whole state now is in very high, so we're all in the same. And one of the, criteria that we use that we actually have to, use most often is when we have 2 or more COVID cases in a school with unknown sources, and we can't make any connections. They're not like in the same class. They're just popping up. Then we have to determine, do we think there may be in-school transmission? And when we have that feeling based on all the data of the ones that we know, the ones that we don't know, the sources, that is when we have to pivot to virtual. So I said this at the board meeting on Wednesday, was the board or Tuesday? I forget what day the board meeting, Tuesday. But it was late. It was after we had gone back into closed section and came out. So I just want to reiterate this one thing. There are often times that someone contracts COVID and they have no idea where they got it. And I know that happens a lot. You haven't been around anyone that that has been symptomatic or positive. So I don't know how I got it. But we do also know that there are times when people do know where they got it and they're just reticent to let us know that they know the source. I think they might think there's backlash or some kind of consequences. There's not. And it's the unknown cases that usually make us close a school. So I'm just, asking everyone to be, upfront with the nurse who gives you a call when your child's positive. The nurse will do the contact tracing for your school. So usually it's for your school. If it's a weekend, it may be another nurse in our district. But they'll always ask you that question. Do you have any idea what the source is, where you were infected? And if you do know, please let them know. It will help us immensely in trying to keep our schools open. If we can find connections outside or even inside and just close off a class or, a sport or whatever group, maybe grade level, rather than closing a whole school. And it may even help us not close anything down if we find out, well, it was an outside source. Well, that's great. It wasn't being transmitted in the school. That's great. So that's something we're really asking everybody to do. I know some people don't want to. They feel that there might be retribution in the community. It is confidential. We will not put anything out about it being in the community. I was also going to show you, but I for some reason I can't. That's when my camera went out when I was trying to put something up on the screen. I mean, my audio went out when I tried to put something up on the screen. I was going to show you when we showed the PRT subcommittees a chart showing the percentage of students that are virtual currently right now, virtual at each school and in person. And it's pretty interesting because what you'll see is there's some schools, that are up to 30% of their students are virtual and other ones are about 4%, 5%. So it is definitely a disparity. There are more students in the classroom in some, despite even class size, in some schools than others. So, that was something that the PRT did discuss.
Mrs. Walker, did you want to put links in the chat? I just wrote you a quick note. Did you want to put links in the chat to these so that folks can, maybe we can click on, or can Chris, maybe we can click on the link while you're ourselves.
Let me see if I can do that.
I don't want to.
Hold on, let me see. I never linked anything in a chat, so.
Yeah, I think it's just if you can just.
Chris, I'll share them if I let.
Mary Ellen, I can pull them up for you.
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt you before.
Okay, yeah, I tried twice. I came in, I tried to load it up. I lost my audio. I did it again. I lost my audio. I'm like, I'm not going to do this again. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a couple of questions in the chat as well.
Sure. Let's answer the questions before I go on to tell you what phase 6 is really going to look like. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. How many weeks does it need to stabilize to make the decision to move forward? Well, it's, in terms of how long, there's no hard and fast rules here. If there were, we wouldn't need to talk to the health experts. This is new, it's subjective. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I think if we're on a steady decline, we were talking about anywhere from 25 or maybe to 35 cases, would be in Middletown, might be a good, bellwether. But then there's also the cases in the school. Some schools have very few cases. Some schools, even at the same level, have many more cases. So, and it depends on what those cases actually do look like. I can't see the questions anymore. So this is just the percentages. And as you see, well, even at the high schools, it's much higher because the students have, a lot of them have opted to go virtual, even those that had been in September and October. But you should see the elementaries generally are lower, but you have Ocean Avenue, which is, higher than even the middle schools. Okay.
Yeah, speaking of reporting out, how does the school find out about positive cases from the health department in Middletown, or is it only if a parent calls it in themselves?
Both. If the parent calls it in, we like that because the parent will always get it before the health department. But the health department will get that and notify us. But a lot of times, by the time they get it, it's a week later. And if they had any close contacts inside the school, if they were sitting next to somebody who was within 6 feet, that type of thing, or a teacher was within 6 feet, that person has been in the building for days after the test actually came back positive, and possibly if they were infecting other people. So we really ask the parents to give us a call and let us know. It's a much quicker way for us to do the contact tracing.
Okay, and so here's another question related to that. When there are two cases with unknown sources at a school, but those students had no contact with each other, would that close a school? They kind of passed it to each other.
It depends. Normally 2 won't do it, but it's possible that it can. It depends what else has gone on and what other cases there are inside the school. So 2 or more is what the guidelines tell us. So that's when we have our discussions with the health department. Okay, we have 2 unknown sources here, and it's it's a little more concerning when they are not in the same class, when there's no connection, there's no common teacher, there's no way they've crossed paths. Those are the ones that you kind of scratch your head and say, okay, what's going on here? Are there asymptomatic people in the school? Or you have to put together all the facts, and then we work through it with the health department.
Okay.
That's not a decision. Well, it is my decision. I always say that it's not a decision we make alone. We consult with them, but it is a decision we ultimately make alone. It's our decision, not the health department, but they help guide that decision. I don't want to put that decision on them. That's not their role.
Okay.
All right. So as you see, there's a big difference between the percentages of students sitting in a classroom right now and those remote. Also, there's a big difference between not a big difference, but there are differences between class sizes in some schools. Some schools have larger class sizes, some schools have lower class sizes. Some of the schools with the lowest percentage of virtual students actually have the larger class sizes. But that's just the way our district is. It's not, everything's not even across the board. So our plan is, we are going to, on February 8th, which is Monday, we are going to extend the school day for our special class program students, the students in the LLD, MD, BT, autism, those classes K to 12, not preschool disabilities at this time, but the K to 12 special class programs. Those parents will be getting a call from their CST member to discuss this. We are going to obviously have lunch, and then there'll be an afternoon session. It's going to look different at different levels, because they still go through their schedule during the day. So this will be, extra instruction in the afternoon. It could be socialization. It depends on the level, the class. It will look a little different, but it will also give extra time, more time than we have now for related services, which now have to fit in that 4 hours and 15 minutes. Parents can opt to keep their child on we're on the early dismissal schedule now. They can opt to keep their child on the early dismissal schedule, but busing in the afternoon won't be available. All buses will start at the beginning of the school day and end at the end of the regular school day for those students. So that, it's an option, but it's an option without transportation to leave early. Okay. Because they're already going to go through their regular school day.
Right.
Okay. The next step, we sent out our selection forms, and that data is going to be really important to determine whether or how we go to the high school option. What we're looking to do is to collapse the cohorts that are there that want to come in, have, instead of A and B, everybody will be able to come in 5 days, but we're looking at only having 40 to 45% of the student population in. So if 80% of the students want to come back 5 days and say they'll come back, then we have to look at how we're going to do that, because the health department and our doctor have told us that, the rate of transmission, the ability for someone to transmit that virus is much higher as students get older. And the high school is, a place where, we're concerned more about that than we are at the very younger grades. So to put 80% of our students back in a building at this time, when we're still in the very high risk category, I don't think would be wise. I think we'd end up closing our buildings more often than they would be open. We'd also have an immense amount of students and staff out on contact tracing, I would think. So we have to look at the data that's coming in terms of the high school to determine, can we get this done? And if we can't get it done by, having everybody just come in at one time, maybe we'll have a different method of determining that. I'm not sure. We have to look at what we have. We're waiting to see what comes in, and then because the attendance has been very low. You can walk around the building. There are like 3 or 4 students sitting in a class right now. So, if there's 3 or 4 on an A day and 3 or 4 on a B day, and that's like 8 on a regular day. So we can even have a little bit more than that sitting in the classroom. So it seems, unfair to say you can't come in 5 days when, why not? There's not that many students in the building. But if everybody opts to come in, that's when we're going to have to try to figure out plan B. We haven't figured that out. And then the next part is to bring in K and 1 on the 16th. We'll, watch the data, make sure that the health data is still flat or getting better, particularly inside those classrooms inside the school. And then we'll determine whether we can, and when, not whether. We're doing it. We're it's not like we're not going to bring students in. It's just when the next phase, which would be the grades 2 and 3. Then we watch that health data. Then, if okay, we'll bring in 4 and 5. And so this is really kind of similar roll-in, like gradually increasing the amount of students in school, as we did in phase 4 and 5. We're not just going to do an all-in model at this point. If we go and if our matrix gets down to the yellow, we can definitely probably move a lot faster. We had talked about revising schedules for more consistent instruction in the afternoon at the middle school and high school. We're putting all that on hold. At the middle school, the more we looked into it, there are students that are definitely taking advantage of the afternoon small group instruction that's going on. Teachers are setting it up consistently with students, especially those that have a little bit more need. And so we didn't think it was necessary to put a schedule in there. At the high school, if we are going to bring both cohorts in together, that's not the time to change the schedule too. Let's see how one goes before we move to the next. So that's on hold right now too.
Mrs. Walker, I just wanted to say, in our middle school PRT meeting the other day, we did talk about the fact that at all 3 middle schools, there has been, since the beginning of the year, an afternoon schedule for to circle back and have time to meet with different teachers during what we've kind of coined as those office hours. So we will continue with that schedule. The one thing that we did talk about in the PRTs members in each of the 3 schools, those teams are meeting, is to identify the root causes and solutions for the fact that some of the students who need to be in those sessions in the afternoon the most are not the ones who are attending. So the schools are investigating, how they can increase communication to parents and also students to ensure that those who are at risk and need the small group instruction, the individualized instruction in the afternoon, are in fact attending.
Okay. And another thing is, and we discussed this in our PRTs, I know the middle school discussed it. I ran the elementary. They were concurrent, like they kind of overlap these meetings. So Mr. Ranella he facilitated the high school meeting. Mrs. Pickus facilitated the middle, and I facilitated the elementary school meeting. I saw some of the high school, but I wasn't there for that discussion. But I know it was discussed in middle school and elementary, and Mr. Ranella can chime in later after I'm done talking. That different schools, like we looked at the percentages of students currently virtual. We know class size is different. When we get the selection forms back, we'll see how different they are in terms of who wants to be in 5 days, who wants to stay in hybrid, and who wants to be virtual. And class size, and actually even COVID activity. So, we posed the question, should we be treating every school the same? Should it be blanket, like everybody in both high schools the same, all 3 middle schools the same, all 11 elementary schools the same? And overwhelmingly, that I understand it, no one opposed treating them differently. And that actually was the viewpoint of many on the committee. They said, well, if a school is ready to go, then they should be allowed to go.
Mm.
And another school who's not ready to go will be held back until they are ready to go into phase 6. Kim, your committee pretty much said the same thing?
We didn't come to any general consensus. There was back and forth about that. Quite honestly, if you saw the remote participation that we had up a few minutes ago, you can see there is a significant difference. It's double, quite frankly, in both Bayshore and Thorne. Currently, the number of students who are participating remotely. So if that trend continues, there's significantly less students to schedule for in-person on-campus instruction at Bayshore and Thorne. And their overall student populations are, in general, are also lower. So, there was some discussion back and forth whether or not, Bayshore and Thorne, if possible, would start to bring back some classes. And we kind of left it where we want to revisit that topic on Thursday when we reconvene, because at that point we will have more updated numbers in terms of remote participation for all 3 schools. And, we talked about really what we'll be facing at that point is the discussion of, exactly what Mrs. Walker just said. Do we move forward, individual schools that have the ability to do so? Do we remain lock and step amongst the 3? And then if we move forward, will it look different? Even moving forward may look different, even if all 3 can move forward in some way. Is it possible that we talked about in some schools, will it mirror what's going to happen in elementary, where maybe we start with a certain grade level at the middle school level and then, phase in the way they're going to do at elementary. So we'll be revisiting that once we have more updated numbers.
Yeah. And I just see Mr. Ranella said they did not discuss that at high school. So we will be meeting with our PRT subcommittees again on Thursday. We'll bring that up. No decision.
Mrs. Walker, I didn't put that in there. That was one of our participants.
Oh,
but,
that was one of the participants.
We were waiting for the results to come in from our survey. The high schools are the numbers of virtual learners are relatively close. So, at this point, depending on what those numbers look like when the survey comes back, if we need to treat the different schools differently, then we would discuss it at this Thursday's meeting.
Okay. Well, we do have a few questions before we get too far forward. We have a question of what is the high school date? I'm assuming that I'm not sure what the high school date refers to. Do you mean when?
I think the phase in.
Yeah, the one where you collapse the cohorts.
Okay.
Well, our anticipated date is the 16th, February 16th for the K-1 and the high school.
Okay.
Okay.
And then related to that, the question is for elementary, is it full day starting the 16th with lunch included?
No.
Okay.
We kind of had a decision that we could either do full day in the cohort model. We could try that, but that would be difficult. We haven't been able to totally figure that out, basically because of the space constraints in our schools and the need for 6 feet social distancing with masks off. You can do less than 6 feet social distancing with masks on and, different mitigations, our partitions, desk face in one direction. But when it comes to taking your mask off and eating, 6 feet is required. And you still have to have other mitigating items there. But we haven't, that's a difficulty, even with a reduced amount of students in the cohort model. So if we were to increase the number of students in a classroom, that would not be possible. So either try to get lunch in the cohort model or try to get students in 5 days in the early dismissal model. And there's more instruction in the early dismissal model if you go 5 days than there is doing lunch. There is a social aspect to it, but from what I understand, eating lunch 6 feet away from your friend isn't really as social as, students really want it to be. So, hopefully by the spring, we can start looking at that after we, get through phase 6. But the decision was made to go with the 5 early dismissal days at this point.
Okay, that's it for questions for now.
Okay, so as I said, there's no decision on whether we're, it was a discussion on whether we can do things a little differently in different schools. We'll continue that discussion on Thursday. We will have more information based on the selection form. So if anybody hasn't filled it out, fill it out. If there's any questions on there, there's the one item that there seemed to be a lot of questions on the selection form was remain in the cohort, on the cohort schedule. That means your child would only attend like they're attending now, 2 days or 3 days, but the classroom will most likely have more students in it because the students that want to attend 5 days will be in both cohorts. So it's not staying in your same cohort model that you are now. There will be, most likely, I can't anticipate that it not be, more students in the classroom. But if your student is, you know, in a routine and really likes the in 2 days or 3 days and out virtual 2 days or 3 days, that is an option for you too.
All right, we have a question related to that. If you selected 5-day on your form, but then get concerned, can you downgrade yourself to the 2 to 3 day schedule? Also, do you know yet if there are a lot of people who did not fill out the form?
I can chime in with that real quick. I spoke to the other two principals this morning as well, and all three middle schools are right about the same. We all are about 200 short of respondents. So I know at Thorne, I have about 411 out of 640. Bayshore is about the same, 430 out of 640, and Thompson is 770 out of 960. So the more people that we can get to fill that out, because our guidance counselors are going to have to reach out to those people, and that can be time consuming. So we really want to get a push to get those, those final respondents to fill out the form.
Yeah, and we've left the window open so they can do that. And we have to get the forms, we have to analyze them, and we have to speak with our health department based on them. So we really need those forms to keep moving forward, and in a timely manner.
Okay, and we do have one last question related to that. The question is, do the more students in the classroom still be capped at the 45%-ish number?
No, will the what?
But the more students in the classroom, would that still be capped at the 45%-ish? In other words, I think the question is asking if
Yeah.
more, is it just open-ended, or is there a percentage that
At
you'll?
the K-1, it is open-ended at the K-1. At the high school, we were advised that we really can't we really can't bring all students in right now at the high school level because of the health data in the community and in our high schools, and the fact that older students do or are suspected. I don't think there's been a study, but the doctor says, there's evidence that they are more, they more infect people or get infected themselves basically than the younger students. So we're just bringing the cohorts together because of the low attendance, in-person attendance in the school, not virtual. Attendance is great. They're either virtual or in person, but the actual in-person participation is very, very low. So we can bring both cohorts together and still probably be lower than we were in September, or at least as low. And that's the goal. We don't want to bring classes too high in the high school. That would probably close the high school down very quickly with cases. So, but at the elementary K-1 levels, it's going to be open-ended.
Okay. Yeah, the question to follow up with that was, what about at the middle school level? Is that going to follow the same 45% number as the high school?
But no, it wouldn't work. There's more than that attending right now. There's probably about 80 to 90% students attending on between A day and B day. So if you collapse them, there would be 90% of the students in the classroom. So that's why we're not doing any collapsing of the cohorts going to phase 6 right at this moment in the middle schools.
Okay. And Dr. Brock is having trouble, one of our members is having trouble getting to the form.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you want, Chris, can you reach out to him offline maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reach out to him now.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay, we're good so far. That's it for questions.
All right, that's it for phase 6. You've been updated.
Okay. Oh, I have a question myself. My daughter's actually going to be going back 5 days a week starting next week, full day, because she's in an LLD. Will she be able to get a locker? Are they going to allow lockers as opposed to trudging all the, like, especially because she's going to have to bring her own lunch? Because I'm assuming it's a grab and go, which she doesn't like.
Yeah. We have been saying no lockers, so that's something that we'll have to discuss with the middle and high school, principal.
I would say that with the amount of students we have coming back, there's going to be plenty of room in classrooms where they can leave their stuff where they are initially. So I wouldn't see that as an issue where we would need to go to lockers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we leave this part of the agenda, I just want to double check to make sure that we've answered all your questions and concerns. Is there anything that we would still need to address? Okay, then why don't we turn it over to, I think it's Mr. Ranella and Mr. Kirkpatrick with the student alert.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just real briefly, I know, I believe there was a question, or actually, someone had brought to our attention a monitoring engine that monitors student emails, monitors, high risk verbiage that may be contained in those. So I just wanted to update the district for the last couple of years actually does have a monitoring system in place. It's called Securely. Securely is an artificial intelligence engine that not only scans student emails, also scans Google Drive and anything that may end up in a Google Doc. So this runs continuously for 24 hours. There's a lot of algorithms. I don't know what they are exactly, precisely, but they're in there, and it does continually scan. Anytime it identifies a high-risk word, it generates an automatic email that goes to myself. It goes to our technology, Mr. Suiak, director. It also alerts Mr. Kirkpatrick, and then it funnels it out to the appropriate building administration. And that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So anytime that one of those high-risk words comes up, it also has the ability to monitor Google Drives for images. So any images, whether it's nudity, violence, anything that may be dangerous to the buildings, once it identifies it, again, it sends an alert out immediately. And also in that email chain alert is Mr. McGuire as well, the security supervisor for the district. So we do have something in place. It actually is very sensitive. It finds a lot of words that when we actually get the alert and read through the email is not what the system had thought it may be. And then we can respond back, so it can auto correct and it can learn our settings and what we're looking for as far as those identifiers. But we do have something in place. It's worked very effectively. We have had the ability to identify students that were at risk, through email, whether it's an email that they sent to another friend or just something that was in a Google Doc. And we've been able to reach out to them and provide the resources necessary to help them out.
Okay, Mr. Kirkpatrick, did you have anything to add, or?
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Ranella said. We get a number of those email alerts daily. The majority of them, like Mr. Ranella said, are picking up verbiage that it's not necessarily harmful to the school community. But when we do identify one, a phone call is made to school administration, building administration, and counselors so they can work through any issues that might have been identified.
Okay. All right, thank you. Before we move forward with the agenda, I did I wanted to touch base about a couple things. I have some email concerns that I know Mrs. Walker, you and I had touched briefly on. The idea of picture taking for the yearbooks. Did you want to close the loop on that and let folks know exactly how that's going to happen, or?
We're talking the elementary level, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, the principals, and we spoke with the principals. The principals and the teachers will be taking the pictures. They will be taking pictures throughout, the next month or so that they can have, the options for the yearbook, more than, they have now. So that will be taken care of by them. If you have any questions, you can call your principal, and talk to them about it if you have any concerns.
And Miss Walker, I could tell you most of the pictures are this month.
Yeah.
With Ocean Avenue and Nut Swamp a little bit later, but everyone else is this month. I could tell you that Harmony's done, New Monmouth is done,
No, I think they're talking about the random shots, just random shots. Remember we spoke at our principal meeting?
All right, it could be that. Then that
Yeah.
usually, I mean, most of the elementary schools work with their PTOs and they've created drop boxes for that type of stuff. I'll give you an example.
The live in school. Remember we spoke about principals and teachers taking some.
Yeah, and that's where we're dropping that stuff
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the people that are doing our yearbooks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of interest in parents participating, but I think there's a criteria as to the kinds of pictures you're looking for. You're not necessarily, you're looking for school-related activity, I would guess, as opposed, you know, like events that are held within the school. Because some parents would just want to randomly submit photos of their children just to be included in the yearbook. But
there's just not many events being held because students are not mixing. So it would be a picture in their classroom or perhaps a picture of them outside, but that would be probably the limit of what it is. There's no group functions, unfortunately.
Okay.
Hopefully next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
And I think that my colleagues have gotten creative with it. Like, and I can only give you an example this week at Harmony. We're doing a thing called Super Bowl of Reading, and we're encouraging parents to take a photo of their child reading for this competition, and then they would submit it to the Dropbox. So where we typically would do that in school, we're doing it at home now, and we'll obviously go through the pictures like we do every other year to make sure that we have a good representation of the whole community when it comes time for yearbooks. And a lot of us are doing it that similar way, I would assume.
Okay. And there was a question, there's a follow-up, just to shift gears quickly, there's a follow-up with the Securely in the chat. Has the number of concerning issues raised by Securely increased since going virtual?
Mr. Rennell is going to have to answer that just because I'm new to the position and I wasn't sent those alerts prior to me being a district director.
Yeah, sorry, took me a minute to unmute myself. No, to be honest with you, the number has pretty much stayed relevantly the same from previous years, from going back to March 13th when we went into the modified cohort schedule or virtual schedule at that point. But from March 13th on, it's pretty much remained relatively the same as it had previous years. And just to follow up on that, I know that social emotional is obviously a major concern of everybody involved. We have spent a tremendous amount of time with our student assistance counselors, our SBSSs, our guidance, our CST. We've created ways that for those students that may be virtual, anytime that they need resources, we've created avenues for our support staff to be able to reach out to them and for them to reach out to us. We still have the ability to conduct threat assessments, whether it's virtual or in person. So all of our safety procedures that were in place prior to going virtual remain in effect, currently either virtual or in person.
Okay.
Mr. Rennella, I just want to add that recently we updated the mental health and community resource page that provides resources to the entire school community on the district website. If you go under the Our District tab, there's a new, an additional link that you can click on that says mental health resources and community resources. So that's just been updated this week as well.
Okay. And I know we don't want to go backwards in the agenda, but I do have a couple of questions that I was emailed from one of the members that relates to phase 6 and how things are going. The question was, why isn't the playground equipment being used if Governor Murphy opened up playgrounds on July 2nd? Is there a reason why there's a moratorium on the kids not being able to use their playground equipment?
You want me to answer that? Basically, he opened playgrounds, but they never changed the restrictions for cleaning the playgrounds. So we would have to literally clean them after every single use. And that right now we all know can't get done. So he did keep it open for people to use at large, but the restrictions that the Department of Ed put out in terms of cleaning those items, those were never lifted in July. So unfortunately, we have to operate with what we can handle. And if that means we can't clean it sufficiently, which is honestly what holds us back from that, that's why we're not doing it or using them. So it's frustrating because that, if you didn't know that minute fact, it would be frustrating since July to say, why can't we do this? And it comes down to conflicting restrictions that are coming out from the state.
Okay, thank you. And there are some concerns about are there children eating on the floor in the hallway rather than sitting at their desks for their snacks? How does that work?
I mean, there are kids that eat snack and they're spread out as much as they can. Some kids can choose to do that if they want, but it's not a practice that we're like saying, no, you have to eat your snack here. We've encouraged wherever they can get it. In most cases, it's outside. That's where we're doing our snacks. So if that is a concern for a parent, I would say reach out to your building principal and just say, hey, I don't want my child eating on the floor. Although I can tell you that I'm sure that in any building, I'm sure it's happened before, but the floors are relatively clean, to be honest with you, the way we've been cleaning our facilities lately. But they're not eating like you would a meal. It might be something in hand and they're sitting Indian style or however they're sitting on the floor.
Yeah, I do know that in some schools they're sitting either in an all-purpose room on the floor or in the hallways because they cannot social distance in the classroom 6 feet, and that is a requirement. So if the classroom is one of the classrooms on the smaller side and the number of students is on the larger side, we have 17 and 18 students in some of our elementary classes, and that's not that unusual. So some of the students may go out and sit on the floor, but they were doing the same thing out on playground. They were sitting down on the playground and eating. So snack, we're doing the best we can to facilitate that. I mean, the staff members are certainly not going to let a student put their, apple on the floor. Make sure that it's on a napkin or they're holding it or something like that.
Yeah. And there's a question about specials. How many children are doing specials? The students are getting a shortened day, and core curriculum is time for core curriculum being cut. How are specials being handled?
So I'll jump in, Mr. Paulson, unless you want to explain. So
I can. It's very, it's been the way we've had since September, which is there is online content, but what we've done when we went to I think it was phase 4, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Pickus, we were doing mass breaks with our special area teachers, and what we kind of did was we've incorporated a little bit more of their content in those 20-minute breaks that we've had to give the children at least some of live experiences with the specials, but there is still a lot of the online stuff that has been posted. I could say that, like, for example, gym class or phys ed and health. I just saw my 2 teachers today posted some stuff for the virtual learning going on. But our expectation is that children are participating in that in the afternoon. And although we did not, quote unquote, put a grade for it, they are posting live content for our students. So we're hoping that they are following through on it.
So the way the schedule is set up right now, there is a 20-minute time in every class for special every day. I will say that on certain days when there is a high number of staff members who are quarantined, mainly due to being labeled as a close contact for another student or another staff member who's tested positive. Sometimes the principals are short on substitutes, so they have to pull some of the special area teachers to help facilitate supervised students in class while teachers are teaching remotely from home who have been quarantined. So that does happen here and there. And then those 20-minute specials obviously have to get canceled. So.
Okay. And one last question. There are many efforts being made to support the IEP and 504 children along with our gifted and talented students, but what is being done to support our regular education students that are struggling in this environment? Is there a plan to help these students catch up if they are falling behind?
So I'll speak to that. We continue to use our Linkit assessments. We administer them 3 times a year. Our first assessments were completed back in October. This next round of assessments, and all of these assessments are linked to grade level standards. So we're able to do gap analysis reports for each student to see what specific standards in English language arts and mathematics, most specifically, there are deficits. And at the high school level, they just completed what we would call Form B, which is the second round of assessments. The middle school is finishing up. They got a little delayed because of the snow, the unexpected snowstorm, and elementary will finish at the end of this month. The teachers meet with the principals. They look at those gap analysis reports. They identify if there are any students who have significant achievement gaps that need to be addressed. And then we start our tiered intervention. Nothing has changed in terms of our tiered intervention approach. Students who are identified with some sort of a gap that the teacher in the classroom can work on, that they'll start pulling them into more small group instruction. There may be additional work that is provided, or practice on certain skills or concepts. We usually give it 8 to 10 weeks to see if the student starts to show positive gains. At that point, if the student is not showing positive gains in closing that gap, then the team will reevaluate the SMART plan. Each child has a SMART plan. That's what we call it. In lieu of an IEP, when you're in tiered intervention, you have a SMART plan. And if needed, the student can be added to our tier 2 groups for intervention. That's when one of our reading development teachers or math specialists may begin to provide additional small group instruction. And if needed, after several weeks of collecting additional data, it demonstrates the student, even with that additional intervention with the reading development or math specialist, is not closing the gap, or in fact, we never want to see it, but sometimes the gap widens. Then we have our tier 3 intervention, and that is very intense. It can be up to 5 days a week. It can be specialized teaching approaches, such as multi-language reading instruction. It can be small group or one-on-one instruction in mathematics. And then we go from there. And they just continue to customize and differentiate to remediate whatever the skill or concept is that is lacking.
Okay. And there's a follow-up question to that. Do you know if the state is considering editing the standards expectations for each grade level this year, since everybody is technically behind? Because there's only...
We've been asking that since the spring. We have been in communication with the State Department asking that very question. Not to our knowledge, we have not been notified that they are revising the grade level expectations or standards end of year. And in fact, we did get notification, I believe it was last week, or it might be 2 weeks ago now, the weeks are starting to blend, that the state of New Jersey is not at this time submitting a waiver to forego statewide assessment this year. Other states have, New York has moved in that direction. They've submitted a waiver. I believe Connecticut has, Pennsylvania. So we're just waiting to see. But right now we are being told that the assessments are going to be administered. The assessments are aligned to the existing end of course or end of grade level standard. They have, to my knowledge, they have not revised the assessments. So the good news is we will have an additional summative assessment report for each student to compare against our Linkit data that we collect with our own assessments that we administer. And the bottom line is all data is useful data. We don't shy from data. Data is, it's a real-time report on students' academic progress. So we embrace that data, and we want to work with the student, with the family, to use it as a prescription to differentiate and, really remediate or enrich. In some cases, it's enrichment. And I would just say, based upon our early assessments that we've been doing in-house in district, I would not agree that everybody seems technically behind. We have some students who are actually excelling, and many students are right on par with where we would expect them to be at this point, almost midpoint of the year. which is a good thing. We are noticing in our early assessments that language arts, surprisingly, we anticipated, we predicted the opposite. We thought math would be the area where we would see greater deficits or, areas for remediation. And in fact, it was in language arts. So, Mrs. Van Glan has been working very closely with the reading development teachers, the interventionists and the coaches and the teachers at every grade level to continue working on those skills.
All right, we do have a follow-up. We have there been any discussions about the mass cheating going on in virtual that have teachers expressed concerns?
That has not been brought to my attention. I don't know if it's been brought to any of the principals' attention.
Okay. Is the tiered intervention for elementary only? And what is being done for general education students falling behind in middle and high school?
No, tiered intervention goes all the way up. It just may look different. We have interventionists at the elementary and middle school right now. At the high school level, there are courses that are differentiated and quote unquote leveled appropriately, where students who have not met their graduation requirements or who are not indicating they are at grade level with their with this expected standards for their courses, mainly the Algebra 1, the ELA 10 and 11. We do have specific courses that they are put into, and teachers work with them very prescriptively as they would do, but it's a classroom teacher. So it's kind of like a small group because it's very hard to pull high school students out of their classes, as you can imagine, during the day.
And one last question, I'm assuming yes for this question, can virtual students take the assessments as well?
Yes, and the state did announce that the statewide exams, the NJSLS, will also be capable of being administered virtually.
Okay. And has there been discussion to just allow all students to take tests and quizzes, et cetera, virtually?
I have not been involved in any of those discussions. Those would probably be school-based or department-based.
Okay.
Questions.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it for, again, I'm sorry to go backwards in the agenda, but I realized we had a couple things that we needed to close the loop on. Let's move forward to the Board of Ed update. I think we have Jackie and Frank with us.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I guess everybody's a little bit done with the snow at this point, I would say. Good news is that I think the groundhog said early spring. I don't know if that's really going to happen or not, but get into the Board of Ed updates. First off, I'd like to say the administration has been working effortlessly on the Phase 6 implementation, and kudos to them. It's not an easy task. Going back to our first meeting, I believe I'll give an update with the strategic planning. Ms. Minuis and I have penciled in to meet with Malone and McBroom at some point this month, probably towards the mid to later part of the month. We will give more of an update when, for our next meeting. And Wednesday, we have attorney interviews for the board. And that's really all we really have to update. I mean, Mrs. Walker did a great job on everything else. So I wish I had more I could say.
Okay. I think Hope has a question.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I am not aware of when the attorney contracts are up. So I was just curious, when is the current contract due to expire?
So attorneys are usually paid on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
They do have usually no more than 1 year contracts that take place. And that's really just for the documentation purposes. So it is an hourly rate based on 1 year contract.
Okay. When is that hour? Is that yearly?
I believe it's June 30th or July 1st is when it's usually taking place.
Okay, so will we be incurring any new fees, or will any new attorney that we hire happen after the completion of this year's contract?
That would be up to the board as a whole, but there would, in my knowledge that I'm led to believe, there will be no fees whether a new attorney was brought in tomorrow or if it was in June, because it's an hourly basis.
Even though we have a yearly contract to work with them?
Yep, the contract, like I said, is really just for paperwork purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any early termination fees in the current contract with our attorney?
There are no termination fees in the current contract, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Frank and Jackie. If we can close the loop on Board of Education and move on to Middletown Friends of Diverse Learners. Michelle Ellis joins us for the first time this morning. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? I guess you're going to be taking Magali's place, I guess, going forward.
Just for the interim, I am currently the picker-up actually for Lincroft as well. I'm covering the interim until Dr. Stafford can find a more permanent chair. I do attend a lot of their meetings and have participated, you know, throughout the years, but I work full-time and own a small business. So it's definitely challenging to do it all, but I'm happy to help where I can. And for those who are not familiar with MTFODL, it is the Middletown Township Public Schools Special Education Parent Advisory Group, and these are required for all New Jersey school districts. We are a parent-led group that works to improve the education and experience for special education students in our district, and we work closely with the administration and our board rep to bring issues and concerns to the district to improve outcomes. So our next meeting is on this coming Monday, February 8th from 7 to 9. It's virtual. And we do ask that our PTA reps can post our flyer on social media pages to help inform everyone of what's going on and when our meetings are. We encourage parents to come and let us know what's working and what's not. The only way we can make a difference is for our voices to be heard. And, you know, education is ever changing. The district wants to know what's going on. You know, what can we change? What can we make better? And they partner with us. We have monthly meetings with the district and our board rep. And, you know, anyone who has worked with the administration in the last year or so knows that they are really, you know, on board with helping us change and, you know, do what's right for our students. So it's a really good opportunity for people in the special ed community to let us know what's going on, let your voices be heard, and come together and, you know, kind of collaborate. So our next meeting will be February 8th, 7 to 9. And following that, in March, we have a special presentation on decoding dyslexia. Deborah Lyman and Allison Pankowski will be presenting on the Dyslexia Handbook, which is a really important guide for anyone with a child with dyslexia or any reading disability. They're both members of the New Jersey Department of Dyslexia Handbook Committee, and they will be going over you know, what parents of children with reading disabilities need to know. And after that, in April, we have another presentation on inclusion. I believe we are going to be partnering with the New Jersey Coalition of Inclusion on that, and possibly the district a little bit. I think they'll be involved in that presentation, which is a really exciting opportunity and something that the district is partnering with us on. So, you know, we hope to get our word out on the upcoming meeting and get some help from the PTAs and PTOs on posting that for us.
All right, thanks, Michelle. And folks, I hope you got I did send a flyer along that I would like it, if you could possibly share that on your parent pages, parent PTA pages, your Facebook pages, that would be a huge help as well. And okay, so that brings that to a conclusion. Do we have any old or new business before we adjourn the meeting? All right, well, thanks folks for your participation. I know everybody's anxious to get outside and shovel. Snow plow, whatever. Take care, be well, be safe, and we'll see you in March.
Thank you, Margie.
Take care. Thank you, Mrs. Walker. Thank you, everybody.